Good morning and welcome to WNHH-FM's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. And nothing ticks better than Pundit Friday, which is begin here in the WNHH studio. We got the crew back. Got the A-team, the number one pundits in the media universe, like the dairy-free goddess of our grassroots radio operation. The belle of our ball, managing editor, Inner City News, host of Love Babs, Love Talk program. Babs are all Ivy. Good morning, Babs. You made my morning already with all that Aretha Franklin.
I know,
this
right?
morning.
Wasn't that the best thing?
I feel like it's like you're soaring when you're listening to Aretha. We got the Queen of Quivery, Quintessence of Compassion, La Voz Hispana, publisher, and back from Puerto Rico, Norma Rodriguez Reyes.
Beautiful dress, by the way.
And
Yes.
we have hopefully WNHH station manager, Heavy D, Donald Trump, Dave O'Tay, Harry Droz, the bravest man in New Haven, and we have the preordained pastor and prophet of paradise, our DJ of deliverance, the filial force of fortuitous fomentation, the ouster of obstinance and ostentation, the savior of civility, hurricane of heavenly homilies, the conqueror of cannabis commerce, the bright light in the New Haven night, the straight shooter from Bermuda, the mystical and metaphorical man on the money, tackle of tempestuous, titan of temperance, banisher, bilious, bullies, prince of pleasantries, punctuality, sorcerer of scientific solution, blessed beatboxer, banksters, and bacchanalians, the just-in-time judge of jackals and japery, the righteous reaper of restitution, the poobah of unparalleled political passion, perspicacity, the exalted expostulator of extemporaneous exegesis, the bossa nova, mover, and shaker, the griot of the grassy knoll, conquistador of custom criminals, keeper of the cure, weaver of wellness and wisdom, mellifluous and meritocratic miner of melody, the plow driver of peace, the driver out of demons, discord and dissonance, the optimizer of opulence and opportunity, the undertaker of unfiltered utterance, the erudite earl of ergonomics, the liberated lion of lucidity, the maniacal monarch of mercy, the blistering barbecuer of brain-dead bozos.
This is definitely a man thing
our
here.
executioner of existential enemies and alchemist of acidness and alliteration, the zealous zapper of xenophobia, Joe Ugly.
Wow!
Finally.
Of the Joe Ugly Show in the morning.
That sounded very pornographic. Like what is going on here?
Well, what I'm wondering is what's going on in Puerto Rico, because Norma just went there. Norma was there. I don't know how many presidents. I don't know how many different presidents they had the 1 week she was there. But one day someone leaves.
The changing
someone
of the guard was amazing.
I'm sorry, Governor. One leaves, the next one comes in. They say it was illegal. He got in, and they weren't fighting about it. It seems like, at least publicly.
It was
and then
like,
the
my
woman comes
bad.
in and says, "Yeah, my bad. We weren't legally allowed to do that." What did it look like on the ground, Norma?
Paul, I'll be honest with you. And what you see on TV and what actually happens over there is two different worlds. Because I was in the farmlands of Lares, Puerto Rico, so none
Your
of
family
that
has
stuff.
a farm there, right?
I mean, I'm sorry.
Your family has a farm there, right?
Yeah. So oblivious. All them only what they see on TV is what they know. Because they don't go
Well,
to
isn't the
city.
undercurrent, even though it was texts that were released showing kind of nasty attitudes on the governor's part and a contempt for people and corruption probes, wasn't the bottom line that there's all this confluence of crisis in Puerto Rico, whether it's the finances falling apart, the hurricane relief, and the rebuilding not working? I mean, even out on the farm, are you feeling the effects of what the world is reading about in Puerto Rico?
No.
Really?
No.
Wow.
All right.
You know, you go. I remember going there to the farmlands right after Maria, and it was like, it was as if a scorched fire had gone through there and burned everything. There was nothing left. And now you go back there, what, 2 years later or 3 years later?
Not even 2.
And everything is beautiful. It's green, and it's just the people over there are extremely resilient. And you listen to all their stories of what each of them were doing while they were there during the devastation that ruined the island of Maria. They all have their stories to tell, and the thing that was very common about all of them was that they all helped each other out. You know,
Can you
they
think of
didn't
one
wait.
story
They
that
didn't
struck
wait
you?
till somebody came in and cleaned their streets, moved all the trees and the wires or anything. They all did it themselves.
But in those stories, doesn't that say a lot, though? I mean, on one hand, it's great that people are willing to do things for themselves as such. But on the other hand, having to move wires and all of that stuff on your own is taking a chance. I mean, that's dangerous work, by the way. and the people should not be left so stranded to where they had to pick themselves up.
That's my feeling too.
Or die.
They are citizens of this country.
Absolutely. I mean, if that was to happen somewhere, let's just say Greenwich, Connecticut.
We rebuilt every highway in the state after my Annis River Bridge.
Exactly.
So Norma, but what about? So what does that say? I mean, what about the feelings about the changes? I mean, there are big changes in that country. Maybe you don't see them day to day in the country, but what did you come back thinking about? 3 governors in a week.
You know what
the
they're
financial
all saying,
collapse.
because over there in Puerto Rico, it's like in the suburbs where you have the same amount of Democrats as you do Republicans. So they're always neck to neck. That's exactly what goes on in the island over there with the 2 different parties that they have. And they're all saying it doesn't matter which party you choose. It's always the same thing because there's honor among thieves.
But that's what we hear on the ground here as well. I mean, when you listen to in our community, we say nothing ever changes. People right next to me could sometimes says that, and it really drives me nuts. But it doesn't mean that's accurate. Don't mean that it's,
like this.
But you know what? In Lares, because Lares is a very small, rural area. But when I went to the plaza, and it's La Plaza de la Revolución, which is the plaza of the revolution, because that's where a small amount of Puerto Ricans were against when Spain took over, so they actually fought. So that's why Lares is known for. So most of the people that want independence for the island, they come from that area. But what I noticed is that about 70% of the stores are all closed. Okay?
What's the reason?
You know what? I finally came to the conclusion. In terms of the economic development,
yes,
there's no immigrants. There's no illegal immigrants. If Puerto Rico had illegal immigrants or immigrants, because if you look at what's happened here in New Haven and in all of the cities,
the way Fairhaven got built up, its whole economy.
It's all the immigrants that have built the businesses. They're the ones who create the economic development, and that's why the city is thriving.
That is so interesting. I've heard nobody bring this up.
Because they don't want to talk about it.
It's kind of a creative idea if you think about it, because elsewhere everyone's trying to keep the immigrants out.
Really
it's not just America.
Listen, immigrants has been they keep money flowing back and forth to this country than anybody.
What I mean is, what if, you know what it is though, Trump, Puerto Rico's part of America, so Trump would probably fight to keep them out, or would he not care on Puerto Rico?
Do you remember how the West was built, in which they offer free land to everybody that went over there to populate it? That's what needs to happen to some of the Puerto Rico.
No.
Lands.
What's really interesting about what you just said is the fact that a lot of Puerto Ricans own land in Puerto Rico. And the last thing one of the things you highlighted here, Paul, you touched on real quick. The thing I'm concerned about is land grabbing. Because hotels, land grabbing for hotels, resorts, that type of stuff, that happens a lot in the island. Yep. And I would hate to see that happen to Puerto Rico, when
it's cheap,
refuse
the
to
land's
help.
cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Refuse to help.
So you destroy the economy, the values go down, then you grab that thing.
And you grab these land. Did you get a chance to go to Black Beach? It's on my list. It's on my to-do list.
That is so interesting about the dynamics of the economy and the cycle you're seeing. And whether or not it's intentional is the way it plays out.
Nobody wants to farm the lands. It's the same thing that's happening here in America. If you don't start bringing in illegals or undocumented to come in and farm the lands, the Americans don't want to do that kind of work. But our kids don't want to do that kind of work.
But what they'll do
it as a hobby for a little bit.
No, they won't do that. What they'll do is they'll amp up the prison complex system, and prisoners will be doing that work because they're already doing some of that work now in places. So for-profit prisons will make a comeback.
Let me ask, in the areas that you saw the shops were closed, were they like small villages?
Yeah, it's a very small plaza. Yeah. It's almost like as big as the Green.
Okay.
Go around the Green,
and
that's
it's all
plaza.
Closed up.
Yep.
And this is like in a town, or is it a village? Is it like is it a remote area, or is it in the city area, or near the beaches?
No, not near the beaches, because we're in the farmlands are inside, in the western, inside the island.
Okay, it's central.
Like, like what happens here in the United States, where the farmlands are located. We're usually not near the beaches.
So he noticed Babs brought up like the way we view Puerto Rico, and it's not often acknowledged as just a part of America as anybody else. You know, as soon your first day back, Norma, you were down at Evergreen Cemetery in New Haven with Chris Peak, the reporter from the Independent, and there was an effort there to get samples from the grave of a New Haven firefighter who had been a soldier in the Civil War. The oldest known, like Puerto Rico. He was from Puerto Rico. He moved here. And as a Puerto Rican, he fought for the U.S. military in the Civil War. And the reason they were digging part of that up and bringing it back for ceremony, some of the remains back for ceremony in Puerto Rico, is to acknowledge and publicize the fact that Puerto Ricans have been part of the American experience in fighting for the U.S. military as far back as the mid-19th century.
Yeah, we know.
You know this Gustavo. Well, he wasn't Puerto Rican because Puerto Rico is an island in reality, kind of. You know, it was a territory of Spain. So these were, so when he wasn't an American citizen when he came here. So he was really a Spaniard. And you know, when you look, these people were sick people. Do you know that they have a code in Puerto Rico, and that's why Puerto Ricans are racist? Okay, and we're talking about the older generation, because they had a code over there that anyone that had any type of black blood in them, they were not allowed to work for the government. They couldn't work in City Hall. They couldn't work at all.
Did they test
so
to
that's
find
why
out
they
if someone had
used
black
to
blood?
hide the people that
Puerto
were
Rico was like
dark-skinned.
Mississippi?
The people of dark skin, they used to hide them in the back rooms so that whenever the Spaniards would come in to check, okay, so all the white ones were always on the front. And that's why they made a song, ¿Y tu abuela dónde está? And your grandmother, where is she? In other words, they used to hide the grandmothers that were black so that people wouldn't know that they had black blood.
Wow.
And that's
deep.
No, that's real. I mean, and when from my understanding of the spreading of Islam, as that was going through, you had another influx over there in Puerto Rico where it was Kuwaitians who moved in. You know on that? Oh yeah. I mean, me and my history, you know, I'm a crazy history buff on this kind of stuff.
And you're also on Pundit Friday. That's right. WNHS FM. You're home for community radio. We'll run down the stories of the week with the best pundits. And of course, our hearts. New Haven was reeling this week to discover that Captain Anthony Duff, a really beloved community cop, real part of this community, his whole family, Mia, his wife, is a teacher, and it's his wonderful kids, and he's driving home. I believe. I'm not sure what's home. I think driving home at night through Dixwell. He's off duty, doesn't have a vest on. He sees a man shoot another man. He gets out of the car after radioing, and he runs after the shooter. We don't know exactly what happened. We know the shooter then shot at him and hit him 3 times. And hit him groin, pelvis. He would have died. Some other officers came who had recently been learning how to use tourniquets to save lives at the scene. They've been saving the lives of other shooting victims. They didn't know it was Captain Duff here. They thought here was another shooting victim just from the public and then they see it's he, and they saved his life, and he's going to be okay. But boy, obviously traumatic, and a man lost his life. And that's important too. Now, and they're still looking for the shooter. And one thing that struck me, I know this wasn't the biggest issue, I actually really liked the tone that Chief Reyes and Mayor Harp set.
Yes.
When they did their big press conference the day after, they went to the site of the shooting. And they said, you know, sometimes it's hard to give a nuanced message. And what they did is they said, we want to make it clear that 2 people were victims here. And that on the one hand, we have a big show of force. They had dozens of cops. And, you know, you shooting us, we're going to get you. But we're not saying that's the only life that matters. They didn't yet have the name of the gentleman who died. But they said, you know, Tony Harp said, no one should be losing their lives in the streets of New Haven. Our heart goes out to the family. We're trying hard to get the identity so we could console them and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, they wanted to send a message that the community and the police together were going to find this guy, the shooter. That's why they did it out in the community. And it's a hard message to send, and maybe not everyone saw it. I'm curious if you guys saw it the way, because some people say, like, every time a cop's shot, every cop goes nuts and stops everything they're doing, and it's as though that life is more important. And I thought they tried to strike the balance right by saying it's cops and community, and there were 2 people here, not 1. Do you think they sent that message effectively? Are you agreeing with me that the chief and the mayor handled it right?
I like Reyes. I think he's got real intellectual acumen, right?
He does.
He
and
really
he had
is.
some training in the church. He was originally a music director. He was thinking of studying. But I saw that for the first time.
He's a thinking man, but he's a thinking man for the whole landscape. This is what I like about him.
Yes.
He's a thinking man for the landscape.
Concur.
And he knows something about community. See, everybody doesn't know anything about community and how community works and how you could be up in the hood and not be in the hood.
Right.
He has that sort of sensibility about him. So I appreciate his ability to sort of say, listen, because they're going to catch the person. Like, I have
right. It might be today. It might be in a week. He's going to screw up somewhere.
He's somewhere down south with his peoples. What?
Or in the basement.
Yeah, or somebody's basement. Because that's just the nature of how these things go sometimes. But I think they absolutely came out the gate with the right message.
Right.
Because I think there was some fear that cops would just start kicking in doors and beating the mess out of people. Do you know what I mean? Like running up on kids and doing the mess that cops used to do.
Right.
And so I'm so grateful that, they've been, and I now that I live in New Hallville,
shout out.
I've seen the heavy police presence, like a lot of it.
Do you think it's over police? Because that's a big debate now. Some people think it's too many.
No. Because you know what? If they had one cop less, people would be like, oh, there's not enough cops.
Right. Either way, there's another side that says, where are the cops? Don't you care about us? Yeah, no, it's two ways.
This is what we pay cops to do. This is what we want. We want cops to sort of take these matters seriously and be about it. What they're not doing is beating up people. They're not shaking people down. They're not forcing their way into, they are walking the streets. I see them I've seen cops with notebooks and pens in their hands. I'm thinking, oh, this is some old school gumshoe.
They're moonlighting for us. They're filing some stories for the Independent.
But in terms of Reyes, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he was born here in New Haven and raised in the Hill section.
Okay, that's what I mean. He knows something about community.
What happens there? It was predominantly African Americans and Latinos, well, Puerto Ricans back in the day, not anymore.
Right.
But I think your life has a totally different perspective when you grow up with so much diversity. And I think what's really good is that the new cops that are coming in that are mainstream white, they're from a different generation in which this generation grew up with diversity. So they're also beginning to be more in tune with the community that they service.
And I'm hoping there's some self-selection, because I haven't talked to most of them. The ones I've talked to came here because of what New Haven's doing with policing, because you're not going to make as much money and you're going to be in some danger sometimes because city. I can't speak for the whole group, but the ones I've met did have what Norma was talking about, which is like seeing policing the way it's done now rather than the generation before. I can't make a blanket statement, but yeah, I agree that's the hope.
But I'm seeing that more and more with a younger generation where tolerance is a lot more. It's more prevalent than it was generations before, and
in society,
and with time, with
time,
even
evangelical right, the younger generations for gay rights and the older against. It's really interesting.
Exactly, you start seeing a lot of changes in places that you would never saw changes before. And this is what have certain Republicans so scared because of all this.
Oh yeah,
intermingling.
Absolutely.
You mean we might not have the whole country just hating people who are different, and then we'll have different countries. We're not going to ask Harry about that. But I was wondering if Harry could cue up something. I want to get your take on a political event that took place at Cafe 9. Candidate Justin Elliger picked up a banjo to play with a group called Bait and Switch they used to be with. I just want to play a short clip if Harry can put that up and let you watch it.
The group was Bait and Switch.
I could kiss your lips every time you took a sip. Oh, give honey in your tea.
Hold on, we got to redo that. It was playing one thing, but that is not actually the music on it. I'm wondering should I have done Mega Seg or Auxiliary, Harry? All right, I pressed the wrong button. We're going to try it again. Justin Elliger, Cafe 9.
Rock me, mama, like the wind and the rain. Rock me, mama, like a southbound train. Hey, mama, rock me.
Babs, you're shrugging. Okay.
I like it. He should pursue that full time. I didn't know he was a musician. That was good. He should.
This reminds me of you Welsh school, either first or second grade, in which we would honor your partner and you had to do curtsy. Can you imagine they used to teach us that barn dancing?
Man.
Wow. Yeah, that's a song
called
called Wagon Wheel that Bob Dylan wrote the chorus, and then some other groups wrote the verses, and it became a somewhat indie, folky, rocky standard. It's easy to play, and it sounds really kind of clean with great harmonies, I think, because I was not having high, I'll be honest. I went to this event. It was a campaign event for Democratic mayoral candidate Justin Ehrlich. I thought it was cool. He was doing it at Cafe 9. I wasn't expecting to love the music.
No, he's no Rick James, but
the band he was with, that he used to play with, I thought they had really good harmony and they were tight. And the banjo was a nice addition to the sound, in my opinion. I thought Wagon Wheel was a good rendition.
Yeah, it was fine.
I had never heard Wagon Wheel before.
No, I've heard it. I mean, I know it. I mean,
okay.
I love musician. I love live music, and the fact that he's a musician, cool.
And, Tony Hart used to act in community theater. She's also got a heavy. She's running against her. They both have a real arts side that people might not know. Like she's very much a music person, and she was an actress in community theater at the Alliance Theater. After she was elected, they did this wonderful video promotion for Elm City Shakespeare.
Yes,
where she did
saw
the
that.
Juliet speech about Romeo. Man, she was good.
She was good.
She leaned into that one. I thought, wow.
And our governor Lamont, he plays the piano.
I'm not
and
a
sings.
big fan of that.
he plays the piano and sings.
You draw the line
Paul,
on,
you'll have to go listen to him one
Lamont's
day.
musical ability.
I don't want. No, not about ability. The kind of approach, but I'm not going to go deep into that. Okay.
Oh,
I'm not going into this.
Oh, come on,
No,
Paul.
I don't want to hear it either.
No, please.
All
no.
I can say is that if Justin Eckler does get elected and they play a duet, we might not be feeling that it's very New Haven.
Got it. Okay, clearly got it.
I mean,
But by that, with that rationale, I gotta say, Justin knows. You understand about Runaway Bride?
Oh yeah,
absolutely. He's catering to the ones who's gonna stay at the altar with them.
I will say, I give him and Tony Harp a lot of credit for putting themselves out there. So much been going on. It's a controversial race, and in any election, both sides are demonizing each other. I've come to the conclusion this week that this primary has been very good for New Haven. Because at this point,
good.
And in this point, because Tony Harp and Justin Ehrlich are really throwing themselves into this race. They are working really hard. And Justin Ehrlich is really getting out there and making a case for change. And Tony Harp has kicked her crew into shape, in my opinion. They are now making the case for what she feels they've done right.
Good.
And the good things in the city. And, we're laughing about it in the office about now all of a sudden there are 5 events a day to cover. But as Tom Green pointed out, they're legitimate events.
Correct.
$200 million being invested in Night Square. Let's see what that is. Mill River Square, volunteers cleared it out. City helped. You can have this really cool kind of hiking place along the river there. There's like 5 things of that a day. New Mill River, that's by James Street in Fairhaven.
Too fast. $200 million going away.
Night Square.
Oh,
like a whole lot of different projects, like Corner Chapel in Orange. You got they're going to be building a big building with apartments and stores. Awesome. Middle Block, another one. The Coliseum site, smaller stuff going on. But the axe throwing bar is coming, and actually the tour actually
You'll
left
never
out
see
some
me
stuff.
in the axe throwing bar.
No, you're going to see me hiding like 5 blocks
Booze
away.
and axe. Who thought of that?
White men, booze, and an axe.
Yeah.
No, I don't think.
So I actually think
one better not end up upstairs.
I actually think the primary's been good because it gets an incumbent to focus and lead.
Okay.
And clean house.
And it gets the vote. No, that's not happening. I would argue. I would argue that's not happening. But
she still got a chief of staff. That
and I think that it's good. To have
and a PR person that sucks. So
I'm going there. And
I know Paul feels some kind of way every time I talk about this.
Anyway, no, I think you're right about making the case, and I think they've done a better job here. And I think that it's important that an incumbent get challenged and the record be put up to question, and people get to decide it in an informed way, and that the pressure be put on for the person to do a better job. And I think I see in her now, she definitely wants to still be the mayor.
Yeah.
And I got to tell under a challenge, she ramping it up.
At that press conference with the police,
she was on.
She was on. My goodness!
But she would on that one. She would have been on anyway. I think even before when she didn't have the fire.
That's true, she's very compassionate.
That's her best moment because she really understands the community and the right note.
But I'm not saying she was acting. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying exacting at all. I'm saying
okay.
that the fire's been lit to really do a better job of talking about the Mill River, talking about Nice Square, talking like 5 times a day, talk about stuff they've been doing.
But let me ask you a question. If she had started talking about this back in March, would we be still listening now in August?
I think we. That's a good point. Do you ramp it up as you get closer?
Everything.
Yeah, you're right about that. I'm talking about over the last bunch of years. Yeah. A lot went wrong in her third term. A lot went right in the first 2. Mm. People have no understanding of what got set in motion in the first 2.
Yeah.
They do have understanding what went wrong in the third.
But they always do because it's easier to highlight
That's
faults.
Right. But lately she's done a good job of highlighting what's gone right.
Good.
In my opinion, yeah.
Timing. Yeah. I think they did a good job by holding
That's going to be a close race.
Listen, I don't think it's going to be a close race, but I do think
general election too. You're predicting? Not gonna be close?
No, I don't think it's going to be close. I think you.
Paul tends to think different.
I really don't. Because
I'm just taking it from what the Hart people and the Elliker people are telling me, and they do polls and stuff.
I mean, it's like when you go to somebody's house and you're like, oh. He's like, oh, the food is amazing. You're like, oh, it's a little something I threw together.
You know what my theory is that Elliker needs to win this time, because if he doesn't win in September, he's definitely not going to win in November. Even though the rolls show that there's a lot of independents, but a lot of those independents are really Democrats that just when they were registered, they registered at the DMV, and the DMV does not really ask you what party you want to belong to. So and a lot of them, when they go vote in September's election, they don't even know that they're not on the roll because they say that they're Democrats. How come? Because they didn't register with the party. The other thing is that once Tony Harp wins in September, okay, the reason why Elliker is because Elliker then will be a man without a party, okay? And the Democratic Party in New Haven, Connecticut is the most powerful one in all of the state. And they're not going to lose their reputation and allow a non-Democrat to now become.
Well, I think that's interesting, Norma.
I think she's absolutely
right. She's taking a stand here against the conventional
even though they may not want to in November, they're going to have to protect themselves.
Because that's
self-preservation.
Yes, that's party safety.
I agree with you guys that if Tony Hart wins convincingly in the primary, and I believe it's too close to call. I really can't call the primary.
Yeah.
But I do think that Local 34, which is the most important vote polling organization, is on it. They sent out the people this week. They have hundreds of people on the neighborhood with a very focused message dealing with what's the vulnerability in the campaign in the black and brown neighborhood. So I think that's going to help her. If Tony Harp wins decisively, I agree with you. That gives her a lot of momentum for the primary. I agree with you. There's at stake. I disagree with your analysis of the independent voters. I agree that some of the unaffiliated voters went to the DMV and didn't know they were registering independent so they can confuse on election day. But when I look at the 5 biggest voting wards, when I looked at 25, 26, 7, 18, and 17, and 10, I believe that almost every independent voter there did know what they were doing. And yes, a lot of them vote Democrat in national elections, but they are of a generation that is much more distrustful of party, much more distrustful of established politicians. I'm not saying they really know Tony Harp. I'm saying they vote differently, and that in 2013, Justin Elliker picked up 2/3 of the new voters against Tony Harp. In 2013, what you said happened didn't happen. She beat Elliker 2-1 in that primary. Now, there were other candidates, but he made up a lot of ground in the general.
That's fine. I mean, I don't have any faith in polls and people's assertions about polls.
Right.
I don't.
Let's see what happens
because I know how my people going to go. Mm-hmm. I know how black women and black people in this town are going to go, and they're going to go right for her. Now, nobody is talking to us and asking us a damn thing about who do we like.
You been polled?
No, I'm never polled. So, I mean, Justin Elliker is a nice little white man, and I'm sure he's a lovely man. I've met him, I've seen him, and he plays a mean banjo, I suppose. But at the end of the day, I know how this is gonna go. I would be surprised. I don't even need to say that because I already know how this is going to go.
We cannot afford, as New Haven, Connecticut, okay, to in November divide our votes racially, so that all the wards that you mentioned
but we did do that.
White.
But we did do that in 2013.
Okay.
The independent mapped it out. Thomas McMillan by census tract. White people voted for Justin Elliker in 2013. Almost nobody of color.
Okay, but when we look at
Tony Harp was mixed. Tony Harp did get a lot of white votes.
Based on the last census, I think it is. What is it? 37% of New Haveners are African Americans.
I thought it was 33.
okay, 33 and something like
I could be wrong, Joe.
27. I think it's 37. Yeah, no, you're right. 35 African American, 27 Latino X. So those numbers are strong enough to say you're way over the 50%.
No, but Latino vote is very low turnout. Latino vote.
But wait, when you talk about very low,
it's not
vote,
50%. Black and brown is not 50%.
Because a lot of those Latinos can't vote.
Yeah,
I'm not blaming anybody
because they're
Norma.
not citizens.
I'm not blaming
yet.
anyone. I agree. I'm saying you can't put those numbers together. I actually think I could be really wrong because journalists don't know squat. I believe it's a lot closer race than you guys think. I agree with every strength you mentioned for Harp.
I agree that it's close. I believe it's close. I believe it's very close.
Bernie Sanders, didn't he say that about?
No, Bernie Sanders did a lot better than I thought he'd do.
Yeah.
I didn't think Bernie was going to get any votes because I grew up in a generation that thought a socialist couldn't call himself a socialist and win an election. I was way wrong over Bernie Sanders. I think he's dead this time. But I thought last time he did a lot better than people in my generation thought he could because I didn't think you could say Democratic Socialist and almost win the party's nomination.
But now that you can say it.
Politics is not horseshoes, Paul. That almost don't win here. Okay, when you get that W, then we talk about it.
Yeah.
And we're talking about that on Pundit Friday, WNHHFM 103.5 live stream, the New Haven Independent. Or it's a year after the, now we're calling poisonings. We really shouldn't have said overdoses. My bad.
What is it?
When all these people collapsed on the green over 3 days last year, 47 people, 120 times got taken to the hospital. A lot of them were replays. They got out of the hospital
and they go right back.
Yeah, and it turns out a lot of them didn't have to go to the hospital. A lot of them just needed to chill out on the bench. But yeah, there was a bad batch of K2. It was national news, international news. Mm-hmm. A year later, how does it look to you guys? Do you think the situation's gotten better? Are we dealing with it well?
Well, we don't have 47 people on the green plaqued out a year later. It could have been worse. I mean, this thing could have kept going, and we could have had in 12 months. We haven't had a recurrence of that incident.
Well, you're on the green every day, Joe.
Exactly.
Now, even when it happened, I thought it was a little bit of cognitive dissonance because every day the green was a cool place where everybody went, and every day you noticed that they were strung out people on the green. So it wasn't like no one went to the green.
Right.
But there was a situation there with a lot of drug trade and, K2 in one corner,
the green, for as long as I've known the green, there's always been some kind of drug activity on the green.
Right. The increase here has been the methadone clinic in New Haven that gets people from all over the
but
state.
we shouldn't be saying that stuff because then that's why the suburban folks don't want to come to New Haven.
No.
No,
they'll come.
But you want to know something?
They like to
eat. True. Norma, you know something? I lived out in the suburbs and I see the same. The green. You know what's the purpose of the green in the first place?
That, a lot of strung out people in the suburbs.
Of course. Do you know what the purpose of the greens was? Always a commerce place, a place of commerce. I mean, the green is when in the era of agriculture, you bring your goats, your sheep, your horse, your cows, and you trade.
Well, during the collapses, I was physically there when they were loading the bodies. Mm-hmm. I went 100 feet, like just from here over there, on the same part of the green, same quadrant. And they had the weekly farmers market. And these people were buying, how do you say ACAI? What is that? The kind of healthy smoothie thing.
Oh, acai.
Acai. So there were people buying $10 acai smoothies.
And they didn't even stop.
Right where people were collapsing on the green, I walked up to them and said, it was the farmers market, this kind of yuppie thing they got in the green. And I said, do you see what's happening right there? Do you see all those people being loaded on stretchers and stuff? Like, I didn't notice that. I said, yeah, they're selling out on drugs.
But this is a city.
This is happening all right next to each other, right on the green. Yeah.
But this is how the city. I mean, it's a city. We forget that. I mean, it's not suburbia. It's a city. And
so it's been a lot of talk.
There's good and bad to that, though, Babs.
I mean, I don't know what else to do.
I mean,
the farmers market not exist?
Here's the question to that, Paul. Were they just standing around a farmer's market and was there an ambulance there? They were picking them up? Okay, but then mind your business. The ambulance got it.
Well, anyway, my point is I still think the green's a cool place that everybody goes. And there are issues of how do you deal with antisocial behavior and people from all over the state coming to get their methadone and hanging out there and dealing it.
I think the conversation has to be around the methadone place has to do something about the way that folks are released or whatever. I mean I think that's something that they need to come to the table with some solutions.
And there has been discussion, and everyone's talking about having street outreach workers from the state and the health
department. Street outreach,
have a drop in, have all that kind of stuff. The most interesting idea I heard over the past year, no one's talking about. I thought the most creative idea I heard came from Toni Harp, the mayor. Mm-hmm. She was on the radio and she said she thinks part of the root of the problem is that doctors cannot prescribe methadone in their office to an individual. So there are reasons for that. You're worried about regulation, about sleazy doctors, about people not getting other services. So that's why you have them lining up for hours in front of APT. That's why most communities won't allow these clinics, so people travel from all over. You have a whole scene where it's congregated in crime.
Okay.
And she said, why not a well-regulated system where a doctor sees the person and, observes the person and makes sure they're doing it all right and gives it out there. And I haven't heard much about that since. It's obviously not up to the mayor. That's a state issue. But I thought that, because everyone's talking a year later about all the other stuff we're trying with the outreach workers and the drop-in center and events on the green and everything. I don't think there's a crisis on the green, by the way. But there is a real drug problem in our country.
See, I don't think that's the solution either, because I think there's too much room for abuse.
Correct.
There's also room for abuse at the app. I agree with you, but there's also room
but
when
I
you have
think
those
if
big
the app
centers.
could do satellite centers in various places so that they don't have one site where people can congregate to. I think if they had satellite centers in places that were accessible, more accessible, so that you wouldn't have so many people in one place, but that you'd fan it out in places
people come
that
from
make
Waterbury
sense.
and Willimantic and Hartford down here.
So maybe app should think about, we need a satellite center in places where people are coming from.
And they have a few of them. And the other issue is,
and maybe people like coming downtown.
Get on the bus.
There's an argument with the treatment community about whether you still get the methadone if you got dirty urine. And the APT Center has an approach that's based on a lot of research that says it's important you still get the methadone. And then there's other research that other people cite saying you shouldn't. You have to have some kind of discipline to really be recovering.
I think we have, this is a real problem, and I think it requires people coming to the table to have real discussion. And no discussion should be outlawed. I think people should bring all the necessary parties to the table, even parties that you don't think ought to be at the table, to sort of have a discussion about what might work. You're
thinking
I
a
think
20th century solution. Are you kidding me? People don't want to hear that other people's opinion anymore. What's wrong with you?
But they do want to hear the opinions on the pundits, which you're listening to the Friday Pundits on WNHH 103.5 FM live streamed in New Haven and Pandora. So the other discussion is how the court system deals with domestic abuse and how we find out or don't find out about what police officers have done when they commit crimes.
Ooh.
So Lieutenant Ray Tennant was a high-ranking cop. He was running the Dixwell district.
Mm-hmm.
And he started storing up a lot of ammo. He was keeping his wife hostage allegedly for a week and his kid, beating her up, threatening to shoot up the neighborhood if anyone found out.
Mm-hmm.
The SWAT team comes, big scene, he gets arrested. 11 months later, we still haven't found out the whole story when the police investigated what was up, what was the signs showing, how did the department deal with it, what other kinds of stuff, because we heard there might be other stuff at issue with a guy who was in charge of an entire police district and dealing with issues like domestic violence. 11 months later, he's still getting his salary. 11 months later, they'd be delaying now so many times in court his case that he will probably reach, because he got put on administrative leave, which is fair. But he's going to reach retirement. He got put on leave a little under 19 years on the job.
That's why you hire a good-ass attorney.
If you stretch it out to 20 years, which is 4 months away, and he's going to get there.
This is why you hire a good attorney.
Now, there are reasons for all this stuff, right? People have rights. If you're accused of a crime, you got to be convicted of a crime before they can fire you. But they have a really bogus argument that they can't give you a police investigation forever while they still technically call a case open because the court system has slowed and got delayed. That's why we have Governor Rowland. When Governor Rowland ran the first time for governor, he beat up his wife. He was friends with the police chief in the town who was a fundraiser for his campaign.
What's the point of having a police chief if you can't call them?
So the police chief. So here's what they did that I thought was so evil. Police chief.
No, Paul. If I could just interject. Bad.
I'm just kidding.
I know you are. I know you are. I know you don't mean that.
No, I kind of mean it.
But I saw. Oh no! If a guy had said that.
Okay. So I just want to go deeper on this because people don't remember this about Rowland. So here's the evil thing, in my opinion, they did. The police chief made two decisions. He wasn't really going to do anything to investigate the allegations that he beat up his wife.
Which police chief?
I forget his name. It was the town right outside Waterbury. I'm sorry, I forget because this was 1990.
Okay.
Oh, so we're talking about Rowland. Okay.
Yeah. So Rowland, the police chief who's raising money for Rowland's campaign, decides we're not going to investigate this. But by doing that, he leaves the case open. He said there's been an allegation, but the investigation is not closed. He never closed it. So because it was an open investigation, they say, well, we can't release the police report because it's an ongoing investigation. It's 25 years later, still no police report. So the voters go to the polls. They don't find out where the guy most responsible for the law of the land in Connecticut just beat his wife and had it covered up with the police chief. This Tartuffe current goes to court to try to get the document. A judge named Vertifui says you can't get it. He becomes governor, makes an appeals court judge. Now, I feel like the same thing goes on here. Yes, there's a reason they can cite about ongoing investigation because the court hasn't yet said you're guilty, tenant. But 11 months later, the people of New Haven have a right to know how a high-ranking cop who was responsible for, among other things, domestic violence cases in his district being investigated him.
But the
Why
judge,
can't we find out what we did?
But the judge has no skin in that game. Ray Tennant ain't rich. He ain't not political or powerful.
But the way the system works, first of all, the state does not. The state has to ask the judge for certain things.
Has the state asked?
The state is in league with the cops. The state prosecutors relies on their relationship with the cops to make cases. And all cases drag through the courts because they're so overburdened.
What now? So you think that the state, you believe the state is
No, I'm saying that
hindering
they're all,
this?
No, I believe nobody's hindering. I think everybody has an incentive, and the system is set up in a way so that it cuts slack for all domestic abusers.
So
And
what
that
would
for
you like to
cops-
see
No,
happen?
but
What I
not
would
for
like-
all. That's not fair to say for all domestic
Cases
abusers
cases
because I know
drag.
some cops and some firemen that were involved in domestic abuse and they lost their jobs and they lost everything
Okay.
because they
I'm
didn't
saying-
have a pedic.
I'm saying that here,
an attorney.
what I would like to see is that you can discipline sooner. You still have to respect rights, but that you don't get to then drag it out to get a higher pension. But more important than the pension, because that's not the big a deal. Public information should be released.
All right.
We should find out. There should be a very short window in which they protect the identities of
Are
people.
people
so they can complete
protesting this? I'm just trying to understand what
They never
people,
do. No one could protest that for a while.
So
It's just the
what
papers.
people are we speaking
New
of?
Haven
Who wants to
Independent.
know this? Oh, okay.
Which, by the way, that's
for sure.
That is one term that everyone
look what
pays
happened
attention.
with White. White got what, 95,000 pension? A pension of 95,000? Did he deserve that?
Yes,
Based on
because he worked 30 years, and I believe the tenant deserves a pension. Should he be able to drag it out for the higher pension? Should he be getting
I'm
paid
sorry,
for a
I
whole
don't think
year?
he's sitting there saying, "Oh, let's just drag this out." He has counsel. He has counsel. He has
Norm Pattis.
damn good counsel.
You're right.
Like he ain't cheap. He ain't
but
no
also,
welfare
but he
lawyer.
deserves he deserves a pension. I'm not for taking this guy's pension away, but dragging it out to make it higher, paying him full till then, doing it in a way so that he will never really have big repercussions for what he did.
But meanwhile,
And the public doesn't get to know how the police department dealt with a guy who was in a lot of supervisory capacity, who created a situation ultimately where the SWAT team came and people could have died, a woman getting beaten and allegedly and kidnapped for a long time. A whole neighborhood could have blown. This could have been one of our big events. How did the department deal with it? How was it able to go undetected? Why? How did they deal with it at the time? What else? Because we've heard a lot. What else was going on, and what signals were not mentioned? What management issues aren't being addressed?
I think those are legitimate questions that ought to be answered.
what I would like to know
I
is
do.
those 11 months that this has been dragging on, what is he doing? Because he seriously needs some kind of therapy.
He is apparently doing a good job, and this is part of what's dragging it out. Part of it is that they keep canceling appointments because the judge or his lawyer can't make it. His lawyer is part of the biggest cases in the country right now, Norm Pattis. Partly it's the judge, partly it's a very overburdened court system. So that's why I'm saying a lot of cases get delayed. And partly the judge is waiting to see, because they're going to nollie this in the end. I bet you anything that he's participating in a program where he does urine testing. Apparently his urine was clean the last time they reported, and that he's trying to get help for his problems, which we hope he does, and we hope he gets a pension.
But isn't that what we want the system to do?
But in the end, I still think there need to be repercussions for police officers and authority who commit the same crimes that they're supposed to catch other people. And I think the public needs to know how it's being managed.
So you want him to be charged and go to jail?
No, I don't
I'm
want
just
him
trying
to
to
go to jail.
understand what the
I don't want him
repercussions
to go
should
to
look
jail.
like. Because he's not working.
First, he's getting paid a pretty good salary, more than I ever made in my life. Okay, second of all, first thing I want to have happen is that we find out promptly how the police department deals with people in authority who commit big crimes that endanger a lot of lives.
Well,
I think we need to know
then
that.
that might be a conversation you have with Reyes. Like, what?
No, he has his hands tied partly by a union contract and partly by a culture and partly by an honest disagreement of opinion about when stuff should be released. But also the court system should move faster, and I think that we should have better process in place
You
for how
talking to somebody
abruptly.
black? You really saying that? Because I
Tell me about that. Tell me about that. Do you think top cops get the same treatment as an African American person caught up in the system?
What? Isn't Ray Tennant black?
He is.
Oh.
Okay, so do you think that is the fact that he's black he's getting better treatment, or do you think that he's top cop?
I don't know if he's getting better treatment or not. I don't know that. I know that, I mean, listen, number one, Ray Tennant is a friend of mine. Number two, his wife is a friend of mine.
And it's a tragedy.
And I've
we don't
known
want
them
him to
for
go to
many,
jail.
many years.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the case that we want to be on the hill, die on the hill for. But I do think
it's not an everyday pedestrian case. It's not
no,
one guy who lost it once and
it
hit his
isn't.
wife.
And I take seriously domestic violence things.
I know you do.
I grew up in a household
and you were a
violent.
founder, right, at domestic violence program.
So I feel very strongly about that. But I also know that that this is the deal in this country, that you can hire representation that will give you the opportunity to do some things that you couldn't do with a different kind of attorney.
That's right. Justice is blind.
He doesn't have a public
and he has a right to
defender.
attorney. He has a right to attorney.
Everybody has a right to attorney, but Norm Pattis is is the creme of the creme, right? He don't got a public defender who's got a gazillion cases and saw you a year ago.
And then he gets in the New Haven Independent as a top cop. I mean, how do you?
Who did?
Wasn't he one of the top cops?
No. Yeah. Top cop means high ranking, not cop of the week.
Oh, okay.
My
bad.
I think this is an impossible situation, but I think you raised
I
some
agree
good
it's
questions.
complicated, and I believe he deserves rights, and I feel badly for his family, and I feel for him.
Yeah, I do too.
But I don't think that we should be denied information about how our police department is working and what impact that has for the safety of the population.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a cultural shift in the way that kind of thing is handled, because I think
and
what
there's
happens.
no bad guy there. It's not about the police.
Yeah, but
chief.
I think police inherently feel as though, and I can't speak because I'm not a cop, but I bet you they feel put upon. Do you know what I mean? Like.
Right, they need their rights when they're accused. Yeah.
Don't assume that we didn't do policing the way we were taught to do it. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Don't assume that we are trying to cover, because I think I think they would feel some kind of way.
And they are doing a good
this
job.
was
The police
an incident, a one-time incident, or if this was a pattern.
This was a problem that was
for
building
years
up.
and years.
I don't know about
Nobody
years.
ever did anything about
That's
it.
the thing. He wasn't showing up for work. Now there are all sorts of explanations about that. But 5 days, he wasn't showing up for work. He had an explanation, but he was holding his wife in there, allegedly, according to the police report, and he was threatening to blow up, to shoot up the neighborhood if DCF found out what was going on with the kid there.
What triggered him to do that?
He had substance abuse problems, and we feel for that. We want the help, and that's what he's getting help for now, and he's a human being, and he has rights. We also have needs for public information, repercussion, and consequences for law enforcement. I don't think we can have two systems of justice. I don't know. What do you guys think?
In your world, that's how it should be, but that in the real world, that's not how it is.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, you're right, Paul.
Hey, Paul, can I ask you
No,
something?
you raise good points too, Babs. I see your point. You want to be humane about it. I agree.
Yeah.
And that's the enthusiastic, energetic note on which we say thank you for listening.
Hey, Paul, can I just ask, since we just get another subject here, when is Orange Street going to open back up, man?
The phone company, Frontier, was taking down this big tower they don't use anymore,
Isn't it
transmission
down?
tower. I know it's taking 2 weeks.
I know. It's like,
I think they're just nana boo boo.
they job security in this thing, It's all
I think
about.
they're just like, we had them hostage. We're gonna keep it going.
Yeah, job security. It's like we're gonna get a whole month out of this. I'm like, come on, I'm trying to go uptown and I gotta go around God's creation just to get back down or go across town. I can't even cycle my bike through. Oh God.
I know. I know they're like, we're gonna give them another 2 more weeks. They're talking that mess.
It's just a tower. I thought they're just gonna snatch the thing down and
No,
just
we
get
want
it
them to
moving
take
on.
it down in all the right ways. So if it takes the time it needs to get it down, so we are not back in this place.
Anyway, that's Frontier. They just rip you off and give you terrible service.
Well, yeah.
I'm waiting for fiber optic cable.
You call it Frontier.
There is a company
That's
moving
back
into
tier.
Westville. We hope they get to New Hallville in October. They're already in some neighborhoods. That's 10 times faster. It costs less, and there's a conspiracy by cable companies and old line phone companies
Keep me posted.
to write the laws to keep fiber cable.
Because I want that. Because I have
fiber optic
Frontier
cable.
now.
You got back to you.
My condolences.
I got him too.
I feel your pain.
No, I do.
And it's not like Comcast is much better.
I know.
Here's the deal.
They're all
in my
the same.
building. No.
Because I had Comcast at my other house.
They've had laws written nationwide to stop communities from doing what Wilson, North Carolina did in Chattanooga, to build their own fiber optic networks that have 10 times or more the speed, and that have it cost less because they want to retain a carved up oligopoly.
You know, Paul. Americans
you want to talk about
are
a monopoly.
so ungrateful. If you were in a country where you can only see, like Cuba, 2 or 3 channels back in the day, or the farmland where you can't see only one.
I'm be ungrateful
when you can watch.
You want to talk about a monopoly? In my building where I live, it's like Frontier has the monopoly on it.
Oh yeah.
You can't be.
My building
You
too.
can't even go on another
Comcast.
system.
How's the service?
Terrible.
How do you get a human being when it's not working?
Oh, forget it.
In which country?
Oh, there's human beings that work there?
Exactly. They literally have someone over there. When I moved in, this is how bad it is. The person who moved out, I guess they stiffed them. They try to hold my bill up because the apartment was not clear.
Did you read the latest on Wells Fargo after all the thing they did with the fake accounts?
Yeah.
Now when people are closing out their bank accounts, they didn't tell them that they were technically keeping them open so that they kept paying automatic bills and then charging them for the overdrafts up to $150,000 after all that Wells Fargo
that's what
has
I mean.
done.
And their CEO is like, I needed my departure money.
All right, I got to go before I get a parking ticket.
All right. Thanks for listening to Pundit Friday. WNHH-FM. Thanks to the best pundits in the world. Babs Rawls, Ivy, Norma Rodriguez-Reyes, Harry Drost, the man behind the mic, the Miracle Man, and Joe Ugly. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to be free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all weekend long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.